We'll just have a quick.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor to come out of closed session?
Aye.
Okay. So moved. So moving on to approval of the agenda.
So there are two agenda items that may not be on the public agenda that were added later. The first one is under the consent agenda under hires. We're going to move everybody down one and add Aubrey Bush as nurse at Morrison Junior High School. And then under new business, letter F is we're going to have a discussion on personal finance software. Everything else should be the same.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving along to approval of the previous minutes. That we approve the minutes of the July 24th, 2023 meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. We have the district bills as of August 16th, 2023, building activity reports, non-certified personnel recommendations, no resignations, but we have the hires. We have Aubrey Bush, nurse at Morrison Junior High School, Hillary McDermott, long-term ELA substitute at Morrison High School, Quinn Seedig, long-term K-5 art substitute, and Jacob Schlegel, long-term PE substitute at Morrison High School. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Welcome. Welcome everybody, and
Yes.
glad that we got people filling in the positions we need.
Okay. Roll call.
Volkers,
Yes.
Buellton,
Yes.
Cromwell,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Stanhoff,
Yes.
Angleton,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes. Okay, moving on to communication and public comments.
Mr. Bartos was going to talk, but he was going to talk about something that's on the agenda, so I
Oh.
just told him that he could,
Top then.
yes, talk then.
Okay, sounds good. Moving on to reports, finance and facility.
In terms of facility, the HVAC work at the junior high and Northside is continuing. We do have air conditioning. I know that was asked in our meeting about next week. It's supposed to be hotter than blazes. So we have not taken out any air conditioning without replacing it with the new stuff. We're still on track for a mid to late fall completion of that project. We will have a bid opening for the high school track Friday morning. That will be here in my office.
So in regards to the junior high HVAC, what was their contractual completion date?
I would have to look that up.
I mean, are they,
It was mid-November.
it always was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was November from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not behind.
Yeah, they're not.
Okay. I, in my mind, I would just expected them to be out of there before the school started, but that's where the contract is written. And that's-
Supply lines are
Yeah.
still such that.
I remember hoping we had heat in every room before
Yes,
it got cold.
before it got
Was
cold,
part of
yeah.
the conversation.
Okay, appreciate
I
it.
can see if there's an end date and I'll send that out. So I think it's pretty close to being on par. So with that being said, we will have next month I'll have a bid, hopefully, to bring to the board for approval to get the resurfacing of the high school track. Finance is pretty simple. We are starting a new budget. We're approving a tentative budget tonight. You have your financial packet in there. There's not a lot to be concerned about at this point. But the majority of the finance stuff will be when we talk about the budget.
Okay, moving on to old business. We have the 2023 RC Smith contract.
So the motion is the Board of Education approves the contract with RC Smith as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
I reached out to RC Smith about the board's, for lack of a better term, concern about the 5% increase as opposed to the normal 3.5% to 3%. The gist of it, or the majority of that, is they can't find workers either. And so they're having to pay their workers more, which that cost is then being forwarded on us, as with everything in this world, it just costs more. So she appreciated the board's concern, but that's where we're at this point.
Do we know what they're paying per hour?
Don't know what they are. I can find out, but I used to know.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call?
Pinkleton,
Yes.
Bravo,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Mihawk,
Yes.
Singleton,
Yes.
Folkers,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes. Okay, moving along to district fees.
Okay, as I mentioned in my email last night, raising district fees is not going to be sufficient to come fix our discrepancy in revenue versus expenditures. But I understand the board's concern, and I understand the need, since we haven't raised fees for a while, to look at it. So what I've come up with, in a way that I hope is not super detrimental, is recommending registration fees be increased by $10 for next school year. So elementary would go from 75 to 85, junior high from 100 to 110, high school from 115 to 125. Driver's ed, we've already increased to 150, recommending keeping high school parking, which we've been doing for a number of years, at $25. Increasing WACC fees from 100 to 150. For those that don't know, it costs us probably close to $1,100 per kid to send a kid to Whiteside Area Career Center, of which we ask them to pay $100. So this would not greatly affect our bottom line cost, but it is a substantial cost to send kids, and we send about 40 kids a year. So that is it's a very valuable program for our kids, and it's not something that we're talking about getting rid of, but to only ask them to pay $100 is a little bit, it's cheap. And then the other one for educational fees, summer school, my recommendation is that it's $175 per course. If you want to take more than one course, it's $175 every time you take it. As you can see, there's a reduced cost and there's a free cost for the essential academic things. By essential, I mean registration. We have to offer a reduced fee for the non-essential things like driver's ed, like parking, like WACC and summer school. We can charge what we want. We don't have to charge a reduced fee. And as you can see, I'm not suggesting we charge reduced for summer school. Lunch, we have not increased our lunch costs for a number of years, so I'm recommending a 25-cent bump on breakfast and lunch, taking elementary breakfast from $140 to $165, elementary lunch from $235 to $260, and high school lunch from $260 to $285. There will be free and reduced costs there, and I'm leaving milk at 35 cents across the board. Extracurriculars. Again, I'm recommending a $10 increase per activity. So first activity at the high school would be $185, $110 at the second activity, $60 for the third. Junior high would be $85, $60, and $35. Scholastic Bowl at the junior high and high school, as well as jazz band at the junior high and high school, and the musical would be the equivalent of the second activity. So it would be $160. Junior high cheers, I did increase by $10 as well, although I don't think we do junior high cheers every year. The other option that is on the boards, and I don't think would be too terribly intrusive to people, is eliminating the reduced and free extracurriculars. So right now you can fill out a fee waiver and you can get your athletic fees reduced. If you're interested in trying to recoup as much money as possible, you can take that out. Questions?
What percentage of our athletes are free and reduced?
We've seen a declining number of students filling out a free fee waiver because they do have to provide documentation as to their income. With your school fees, you don't have to provide documentation. So if you're filling out a waiver for athletics, you have to come in with bank stubs, pay stubs, those types of things. And it can be cumbersome for some people, and so they chose not to do it. Luann is in charge of that. She could probably speak more to the actual process and number of kids who do it.
There hasn't been a lot this year that have done it. Matter of fact, there's been quite a few that actually came as being free from the state that have not done it, because a couple of them I thought, gosh, I haven't got anything from them, and I looked and paid for it. But they have to bring in their last 2 pay stubs, last 2 bank statements. They're getting disability, they have to bring in disability thing. If they have child support, they have to bring in documentation showing what they're supposed to be getting, whether they get it or not, it counts. And then I use that to calculate like what their annual income is. And then there's a state
Right.
state amounts for each, like they have like an annual for, 1 dependent, 2 dependent, 3 dependent. And I got a spreadsheet, I put the numbers in, and it tells me if they're free or reduced.
Is the cost of the program for Scholastic Bowl and is that less than what the average sports are?
The reason I increased those is there are the major cost would be the advisors.
Well, I'm just saying, you put them at the rate of a second activity versus the first.
Overall, they don't cost as much.
Okay.
Other
So,
than- yes.
so they're reduced, but that's justified because they don't cost the district.
Yes.
Okay.
My concern with raising jazz band, and the musical would be like, if you're in a musical or play and you're working backstage, you still want to pay $100 to work backstage.
I don't think we charge the backstage assistants. I
That'd
could
be my
wrong.
concern. That
Sure.
would be, So,
You mean active participants in terms of,
like if you're participating.
you're in the cast
Yeah.
members
Yeah,
versus a volunteer.
right. I
You
mean,
can waive that.
so I don't know how you would go about, that could be, because they try out for it, obviously.
Right.
It would be like a manager on the basketball team. We don't charge the managers on that level.
I just would hate to see our place just like drop because we don't have enough people
Right.
doing it. Or jazz band, well, I might pay this money to have to go to basketball games and play. They should want to, but
Well, there's a stipend for that's why we, in the
Right.
world, we wouldn't charge, but we have a stipend for those positions, so we need to have some revenue come in.
Yeah, and I think the reality is we're still not gonna make up the cost with fees, but if it can help
They're able to get-
offset, and then we talked about other ways, if there are other sponsorship things that we, out there.
is there a chance of, and I'll probably get stoned for this, but for like cutting some of the games off the season?
Say that again, what?
Eliminating
Some of the games. Like softball, softball is a very pricey sport. And I coach softball, I love softball, but we play a lot of softball games every week, 3 to 4, sometimes 5 games a week. And how much is a game, an away game you're paying for the bus, and it gets pricey, or you're paying for 2 or 3 umpires, every night, and they get paid, what, $75 a game,
It's probably more like 100 for 2.
Do they have to play so many to be in a division? I don't
I'm sure you have to play your
You're
conference,
given-
just play your conference.
Can you just say, like, on an average, how many games are they playing a season?
So football plays 9,
And you can't cut that.
basketball,
2 games.
volleyball is probably between 20 and 30, softball and baseball between 20 and 30, depending on weather.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're gone a lot. Coaches are
That
gone.
is a
every
lot.
night.
Wrestling is probably 15 meets and 2 or 3 tournaments. What am I forgetting? Swimming is probably 6 to 7 meets. Golf is probably 15 meets.
That's also the sport, like, if you're doing it, it's because you want to play the sport. Like, I don't know if that's gonna be a huge, have other schools ever done that?
Reduce the schedule.
Yeah,
But sometimes I get home 10, 11 o'clock.
Well, I'm
on, like,
also
a Tuesday
thinking
night.
that's got,
Yeah.
I came from Wisconsin, And the school district, we didn't have that many games in a season. For
Right.
baseball, for softball, volleyball, we just did not.
I mean, once the season starts for softball, you only have a few practices every once in a while because you are playing so many games.
So I'm gonna put a plug in here. In 2009, we got third in the state of Illinois for baseball, and we played 34 games.
That is crazy. I'm sorry, did I say that?
Do we make any money off that?
No, I'm just, but I'm also thinking about the
We got a nice
kids.
road sign.
You know, by the time they get home from
It's
a
in my
game,
garage.
they do it again. I mean, that is
Scroll out.
so stressful for them.
Maybe we could sell those, you know?
If you want, it's online, you can sell it, it's fine, just sit there.
The problem is there is no
Yeah,
good way to fix this.
no,
And I think this is very fair for the students and everybody else. So I mean, we beat this to death in finance council. There's no way to fix this problem.
No.
So I think this was the most fair for the families and everybody
Yes.
wants to play multiple sports. We didn't double or triple anything, and we're still gonna lose money doing it. So there's no way to fix this.
Well, technically, double the musical.
Don't want to hurt those folks.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, thanks, Jen. So I'm not looking at that, I'm still here.
Okay, so we are voting on this tonight, right, for next year.
You can, if you want, you can table it, and I can come back with more language that says waiving certain things, the backstage stuff.
but they would be waived anyway, wouldn't they? They wouldn't be paying if they're doing,
I don't,
Stage work.
I don't believe we make the stage workers pay. That was part of the issue last year, is we didn't make anybody pay.
Why don't we, if everybody's fine, why don't we approve it, and if we need
I was
to,
just gonna say,
Yeah.
we
Go
tabled
ahead.
it
We
right
got,
away.
we got plenty of
to
time.
pull that off, we can vote next meeting to pull off volunteer workers.
yeah, that's a good idea.
That's the musical, produce revenue for yourself?
Yes, but they keep it. Something else we can look at.
And it's
Always
okay,
been
but it's
that.
okay if they
so they
keep it,
keep
because
it.
it goes
Does
Does that
to
go back to paying for outfits?
It pays for
Costumes.
costumes, it pays for, you have to,
your set
when you-
building
when you,
materials.
when you, do a musical, for example, you have to buy the rights, which can be very expensive.
Yeah.
So the money that they generate from that goes into their account, which doesn't cost us anything, because we're not having to pay for those types of things, so
So
it's semi-self-sufficient,
what all does the school pay for then?
nothing. For those,
So what are we charging them for?
We let them use our facilities,
It's there anyway.
there's a stipend for the director.
and we also have a stipend for the, yes.
It's a good question, but that's why we charge.
How much do we pay? How much is that set for?
We had it listed at one point.
Tell you in a second. Come on, union president.
I know, I just. I didn't bring it.
You're gonna raise it so you can find it first?
Nah, I think
I've
it's
got it
by
here.
6 or 9. I couldn't find it.
So the band, excuse me, the play director stipend, musical stipend is 8% of the base. So for this year, what's 8% of 36,000? 10% would be 36.
I'm past contract out. I'm not doing the math.
So it's probably between $2,500 and $3,200. Yes, that's between $2,500 and $3,200.
So, yeah, here,
I mean, I go either way. I look at, okay, so even if they don't pay anything, it's only costing us $2,800. But then we look at softball, and they're costing us $12,000. You know,
That was deceiving because you're taking the second or third fee rate because it's the third sport. So if that was the first sport,
okay, so
Then
you're
no.
losing $9,000.
yeah, I'm just, the football cost more, yeah,
You know,
I understand.
I mean, that really is the only one I'm hung up on. I don't want to see kids deterred from doing musical because, and I don't know if they will, but
we have, just like anything else, we have payment plans. There are other ways. I don't think anybody in the community or the district wants to see somebody not be able to do something because they can't afford it. So there are other avenues we could take if someone truly wanted to be part of something and couldn't afford it.
I also think too, kind of spreads, so it's not just only athletic kids that are doing the burden of paying fee, that it's, you know, spreading that around to everyone that's involved with an
We just
activity.
leave it 50.
75 sounds good.
Jen's negotiating. Make it 75.
Auctioneer, yeah.
I feel like half of, or something,
My argument is it doesn't help the $160,000 shortfall we're trying to make
Right.
up. So when we start giving away money, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I think we can just outvote Jim and we'll just.
I'm okay with that.
That's right.
Democracy at
Yeah.
work.
Well, I guess we should do a roll call. I mean, are we really voting on this? Am I-
Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
Yeah, I'm saying let's do
We're
it.
voting.
We've been going over this for 4 months.
I
It's
know,
starting to
that's
kill
what
it.
I said.
I'm
Get it
I'm
done.
done with this one.
Bravo,
No.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Samma,
Yes.
Engelmann,
Yes.
Folkers,
Yes.
Evilson,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes. Motion carries.
All right.
So this is why there's support. Moving on to the tentative budget.
So, all right, on paper, this looks really, really good. So we're projecting a surplus of $288,000 in our fund. Now, the reason why, this is the last year of ESSER funds. So last year, our increased what's called corporate personal property replacement tax. Say that fast, I hear you. And about July 5th, we got a ton of local tax money that was due, or excuse me, not tax money. We got money that was due last fiscal year. We didn't get it till the start of this fiscal year. So some of this revenue is stuff that we already spent because we had to spend it last year. Are you with me so far? So with that being said, we have a budget now that is projecting revenue in excess of $280,000 over what our expenditures were going to be. Our expenditures are down. That is the result of some short staffing, some decisions not to replace certain positions or certain areas. So we're looking at a decrease in expenditures. We're looking at a inflated, if you will, revenue stream. We are still very concerned about our operations and maintenance. We are projecting those costs to go over $1 million. One of the discussions in finance and facility is how long are 4 buildings sustainable? And was there a cost benefit to running 3 instead of 4? We did a really quick look at that several years ago. At this point, with our enrollment and construction costs, that's not a viable option at this point. Not saying it'll never be a viable option, but right now it's not. We're looking at, so debt service is what it is. That's the money we owe on our bonds. We're projecting a little bit of a deficit in transportation. That's not necessarily reflective of the R.C. Smith contract. We are sending a number of kids to other facilities for behavioral and educational purposes. Those costs are going up. Where am I at now? I am at IMRF and Social Security is fine. Capital projects is going to look bad, but we already have the money to cover these costs. So these are costs we're going to expend this fiscal year, but we got the money for it last year.
That was the bonds.
That's the bond. So just because it looks bad doesn't mean we're losing money in that fund. We already have the money, we're just spending it this year.
We have to be good stewards of the money we have and not
Yes.
waste it.
Yes. And then there are no costs coming out of, what's that, working cash? Working cash. And tort is a little bit underwater, but that's fine. We can levy the need for that coming in December. And then health, life, safety has a nice fund balance.
And explain what tort is, because I don't know if everyone knows
All
what
right,
that
so
means.
tort essentially is anything that involves risk management, We can pay some salaries out of that. Part of my salary comes out of that. Part of principal salaries comes out of that. You have to be very careful with that because some districts have gotten in trouble because they would pay all the principal salary out of it. So we can pay some transportation costs out of it. We can pay some administrative. We pay our nurses' salaries out of that.
It's a legal thing too, right?
Yes, we pay lawyers' fees. We pay insurance out of that. If we wanted to do, like, let's say we wanted to, in our risk management plan, we wanted to put a new fence around Southside. We could use TORP for that because it's part of our risk management plan. The reason this is a nice fund is by Illinois law, we can levy to need for that. So what I will do come around December is I will look at our risk management plan and make adjustments. Maybe we want to pay a little bit more nurse's salary next year. And then when we do our levy and we go out, we ask that money for taxpayers to cover those costs. Does that make sense? So it's a nice fund that we can use. We don't want to abuse it because that's how districts got in trouble. But it means some of my salaries, some principal salaries, nurses' salaries, I think some of John Husenfeld's salary comes out of that. It doesn't come out of the ed fund, so it keeps more money where it needs to be, and that's to pay to educate our kids. Everybody understands school finance now? Okay. So that's where we're at with that. As per Illinois law, this is now will be on display for 30 days. Anybody that wants to come in and look at this can. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while somebody will walk in and said, I want to see your budget. So, questions? And again, this always changes. We will do an amended budget in June.
Okay, moving along to new business. We have the high school handbook change.
So Mr. Mills has hit the ground running and is recommending a few changes to the high school handbook.
Do I need a motion first before we discuss?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to discuss?
So
Second.
So the first two are just updating staff, changing people who are no longer here with our current staff. He would like to amend the cell phone policy with the additions. You see, cell phones may be used during passing periods at lunch and before and after school. Currently, using phones in the classroom is at a teacher's discretion. In his experience, that doesn't work, so he's eliminating that option. And then, given the fact that everybody has a Chromebook or has a device, there's no reason for them to be using them for academic purposes. So those are the recommendations that he's making.
Do we have like consequences on there?
I think the consequences are what he's not making any changes to those. As far as I know.
If I was trying to argue against this from a student standpoint, that cell phones may not be used in the classroom for academic purposes.
I use it for personal. I'm using it for social media.
Give them all an idea.
Well, I'm just
Well, yeah,
doing want to choose a word.
Do we have a tape delay?
We're going to get arguing about this.
Who are we kidding? There's not a single kid in this district. He's right out there.
Don't you know it's being broadcasted live and I won't take out anything.
I like to see
Yeah,
that the new principal's taking action and
Yeah.
wanting to change things.
love it.
So my thing is, I think he's got my support and I hope he continues moving forward and making change. So,
I do agree with you, though.
yeah,
I
So
support the decision. I just recommend,
The wording needs, it needs
Yes.
to be, cell phones may not be used in the classroom,
Period.
period.
or
Or an exclamation mark.
or except for emergency purposes. I mean,
No,
Don't say that, don't say
no,
that.
because then they'll have a fire drill and then they'll start calling their parents and we'll have
Okay, all right. I guess
100 parents show up in the building.
No, I think.
So is the amended motion then to approve the changes with the addition of cell phones may not be used in the classroom? End of sentence.
Yes.
Yes.
yes, agreed.
Is everyone good on the amended motion?
Yes.
can we legally
Oh.
do that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The purchase of an oven stove for the food service department.
All right, so we are approved, so the motion is the Board of Education approves purchase of an 8-burner oven combination for $3,800.
Okay, per the motion, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Have the cooks seen this?
Yep, they gave it to me.
Something like that.
They gave me two, they didn't have a preference, there was an 8 and a 10. Since they didn't have a preference, I took the less expensive of the two. And we only use health, life, safety funds for this instead of ed funds.
Yeah, when you sent out HLS, I was like, is this Homeland Security?
No, sorry. Sorry, health, life, safety.
Do we have, when do we expect this to be delivered?
That's a really good question, I don't know.
Okay. No, good answer. Very good. That's fair.
Okay, roll call?
Gamma,
Yes.
Angleton,
Yes.
Folkers,
Yes.
Pivotalson,
Yes.
Trumbull,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes. District subrate.
Motion is Board of Education approves the 23-24 district substitute teacher pay rates at $110 per day and the long-term rate at $155 per day.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
We have not increased sub-pay for several years. We are behind the rest of the area. I think the average is about 106.22 in the area, so going to 110 puts us in a competitive state with other districts.
I remember discussing this about a year and a half ago. We never made an action to change it.
So, and then the way the long-term sub works is right now we base it on education. If you just have a sub license, you get a certain amount. If you have a teaching license, you get a higher rate. And then if you have to have a teaching license with a master's, you get a higher rate. We're eliminating all of that and just going with the highest rate. So it'll be $155 a day. And that would go effective now, so our current long-term subs would get this higher rate this year.
So can you repeat, what's the just 110 you said,
$110 a day.
and then long term?
And then long-term is anything 10 consecutive days or more would be 155. They get 110 for the first 10 days, and then after that, they get the 155. We are not doing that with our long-terms. We're just going ahead as a recruitment tool, just giving them the 155, since they're essentially taking over the class.
Any other questions? We roll call this? Okay, roll call.
Angleton,
Yes.
Folkers,
Yes.
Pivotalson,
Yes.
Trumbull,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Gamma,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes. Coaches code of conduct.
This was something that came up in a discussion last month, 2 months ago, and I have drafted a coach's code of conduct, essentially outlining what is expected of our coaches. I've shared it with Mr. Mills, Mr. Dolan, and Mrs. Conley. Everyone seems to be in favor of it. You have had a chance to look it over. It's putting down on paper expectations, and then if those expectations aren't met, possible ramifications.
Who determines the ramifications?
I would leave that up to the high school principal at the request or at the either conduct they see that's unbecoming or a recommendation from the athletic director or myself.
Okay.
Or me through you guys if you had a question about something.
I think the public right now is not sure about how things are being leveled.
Okay.
And they're concerned about that. It's being brought to me. So if there are infractions, as we'll call it, they expect it, if we're going to outline this, they expect it to be followed up on. So,
As I would too. If there's no concern or questions, I will bring this back for approval at next month's meeting. So.
Okay, sounds good. Road closure.
So, there is a discussion item with the city about taking out a stoplight and closing part of Genesee, which would connect the southern part of town with the northern part of town. I think Mr. Bartos has a petition that's going around town. I reached out to City Administrator Melton, and he's told me that is not a discussion item, it's just an idea floating around, that at which point, if it gets to an actionable item, they would reach out to the district and get our opinion on it. In a discussion with another board member, I just think it's important that we kind of have a semi-informal discussion about how this would impact transportation. So you were gonna sign up and talk, so I was letting you go.
I will read verbatim or anything like that. Some of you may have seen the petition that is circulating around town. In essence, I looked at some crash data just earlier today. I submitted a FOIA request to IDOT a few weeks back, and I found it's really not as dangerous as many people might imagine. We're only
Not making your argument here, Brian.
It was relatively safe. There were only 3 collisions at the intersection during the past 5 years. So it's actually, when you think about it, a relatively safe intersection. Of the 7 intersections I studied, I looked at Jackson Street and Route 78 Cherry Street, Madison Street, Orange Street, and Bay Street. Only Keaton Street was safer with 0 recorded collisions. So based on numbers, I have those in a spreadsheet for anyone to review them. It is a relatively safe intersection. Lines of sight, we will talk about lines of sight concerns. Picture the cornfields that line most of Whiteside County. Similar issue exists out there. We have to check both ways, make sure there's no cross traffic. So it's really not inherently dangerous. And some people may have suggested that it's an overblown concern, I believe.
So where's that?
There's a 1 block stretch of Genesee between Route 30 and
Like
Exeter.
Exeter.
So near Exeter Sport Fields, right? 1 block stretch is under proposal for closure.
Possible discussion.
Potential.
Right.
But you haven't, it was haven't.
On our agenda, or?
Yeah.
I think it may have been added.
Because I was at school, I was at the city meeting last, so I could explain what they're actually doing.
Sure.
Okay, so the way IDOT requires there to be a stoplight there is because you cannot see line of sight, but you can go off of 30 onto there without a light. So they could make it a one-way block, both from like the Presbyterian Church and the bank there, or the whole thing, and coming off, so going north, and also a one-way going south off of 30 for that block that is between
So south, going
30.
towards a railroad track would be one-way going south, and going towards north side would be a one-way going north.
Yes. So that is a proposed, instead of closing it, because that has been fully, like, there's a huge petition going around that everyone's like, nope.
It's right there.
I signed it too. But I went to the meeting because I wanted to know more about it,
Yeah.
and they don't stream their meetings, so I had to go it. So they proposed this one-way option, and I actually don't think that's a horrible idea personally, to get rid of light, because the light it's not programmable. It's what it is. It's very old, it's obsolete. They have a hard time finding parts for it. And to replace it is $160-some thousand to replace the lights. And basically what happened was IDOT came through and said there needed to be a light there. They put it up and said, here, Morrison, now this is your responsibility to maintain.
Because this is just a Morrison thing, right? That's my understanding, is that IDOT's not coming in and saying you have to take this light out. It's what we want.
No,
to do.
IDOT is saying that if we take the light out, no one can pull on to 30 from that.
Oh, gotcha.
Road.
Makes sense. Okay.
Because it
So-
is hard to pull out
Mhm.
to see,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So we have an old obsolete light on an old obsolete road.
Yes. And the city wants to do construction there, so they want to figure out this light thing, so if they do the construction, they can just like get rid of it and make it, pretty the first.
So
time
they're
instead of
not,
coming back
they're
and
not, so the closing, barricading it off is off the table, is that the
Yes,
understanding?
because the public's.
It's
So
about-
they're
If
talking
you're
about-
coming from north to south or south north though, you're gonna have to make some turns. You can't be a straight
Right,
shot.
Doesn't
and there are, you can go around it, like you could go down to by the Methodist church if you're coming from the north. Or you can go up, like for busing, it wouldn't affect at all if they made it a one-way. Because you could still pull on from 30 up to north side.
And go cause traffic tie up before and after.
It will.
Yeah.
But the light also does that. Because it's not timed correctly.
Did they give a time frame? Are they voting on this?
No, it was literally just a discussion, like bring up, last time. And I leaked out, they will actually vote on it and the city.
And as a person who pulls on Route 30 from that intersection on a almost daily basis, it is largely ignored. the red lights there.
Yeah.
It is largely ignored anyway. So really what you're saying is you're going to make a fact what is already a reality, because the green light tells you when it's legal to slow down and be safe. And I know that,
Yes.
because I wait, and then people go, and the red light, and then I go.
But
Yes.
it's not largely ignored by.
I have absolutely.
We follow our signals. And it's also a very valuable place for children to cross, I believe it is.
Yes, they talked about still keeping in a crosswalk button for children to walk across.
Barricading, not taken off the table.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Not taking off the table.
All right.
So,
My
That's what I know.
recommendation is that we continue to monitor this and
Because now the buses use Genesee. With
have,
the-
enter into conversations with,
Yeah, are the one-ways like all the way north and all the way south, or is it only like
it's
a
just
block?
one block.
If they're gonna make it one way,
They-
make it one way all the way
they did-
north side.
They did talk about that though, so you could show support for that.
my recommendation, we continue to monitor this and
Once they come.
everyone keep Dan in their prayers tonight because he's supposedly, or I guess, taking his life in his
All right, moving on to the personal finance software. This was an added.
Oh. It's not on my list.
Okay.
So this is a discussion item. We need to purchase something for our personal finance class because the class was taught, the curriculum was written by previous teachers who were business teachers. Mrs. McDermott is teaching our personal finance class. She is not a business teacher, so she doesn't know how to write the curriculum, and so they're asking that we purchase this for them. It is not an action item. I am just putting it out there. If there's no objection from the board, I will go ahead and place the order and then approve it at next month's meeting.
There's kids already in this class, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then yes, you need to
They have
purchase
been
something.
scouring the building to cover curriculum.
Is this what Ms. McDermott would like to use?
I believe so, yes. This is coming from conversations with Mrs. McDermott and Mr. Mills.
And what was your, did you have, it wasn't insanely expensive.
It's 2,600,
Yes.
2,680.
We're talking $2,600. So that's, my thing is, does it need to be a discussion item, or we need to just?
I just want to ask,
We can legally
has
pull
she,
it out.
has she looked at the curriculum at all, or has she just looked at the textbook and say, I'm good? I mean, has she been able to like just sit down with it at all?
There's no textbook.
It's
That's
all
fine.
online.
Oh, it's all
This,
online?
this is all online.
So she's gone through the program?
I believe so,
Like,
yes.
Okay, as long as she's gone through it, that's, yeah.
So if there's no, I will go ahead and,
Yeah, those poor kids. I think that's a good choice.
All right, moving on to certified staff.
so we have two certified staff. We'll do them separately. The motion is Board of Education approves the retraction of the retirement incentive for Linda Lyman effective August 17th, 2023.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, roll call.
Do you want a discussion?
Can we discuss it?
I will just say this, after conversations with myself and Mrs. Conley and Mrs. Lyman, this is in her best interest to withdraw this request.
Okay.
And do so now before she has to pay it back.
Roll call?
I can explain more, I just can't do it in open session.
It's okay.
Volkers,
Yes.
Pielson,
Yes.
Trumbull, Wilkins,
Yes.
Samhoff,
Yes.
Engelkens,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes.
And the final motion is the Board of Education approves the retirement request of Tiffany Cahill effective at the end of the 25-26 school year and per the current collective bargaining agreement approves the retirement incentive as listed.
Do we have to allow her to? Or she's really good?
Is, do I have a motion?
You can say no, but she's still getting up.
Second.
Roll call?
Pielson,
Yes.
Trumbull,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Samhoff,
Yes.
Engelkens,
Yes.
Volkers,
Yes.
Lucky.
Yes. Okay, and then,
We will be going back into closed session very briefly.
I know this is out of order, but do principals want to provide, and it's on the agenda, if they want to provide any good news around the district coming back to school? the opportunity to,
I heard your speech made people cry again.
and I seen you wiping out swings this morning.
I did. It was really humid this morning, so I always do that because if I don't, the kids will with their clothes. No, it was a really good first day. It went really fast. We ran around like crazy, getting everybody and all their stuff where they're supposed to be, and then we ate lunch, and then it was time to go home. I'm sure a lot of kids are exhausted right now between the fair and the first day. I bet you they're exhausted. I know I am.
Yeah, I mean, at Southside, we had a great first day. It's called Making a Mustang, kind of our boot camp. So we go just 20 minutes and hit all the different rules for cafeteria, bathrooms. They don't get a whole lot of class time, but it's throw everything into one day. So it's a good first day.
Quinn was excited. She goes, "We did no work." Okay.
Junior high, I said it was a little different, only because typically you start the year with freshly waxed floors and the smell in the air, and with all the HVAC, Andy and I were talking, I was there last night helping just try to get stuff swept up and cleaned up and thrown away and all that. HVAC people stayed pretty late last night, so they did get a lot of the individual room rooftop units hooked up. So that was good. Obviously, there's a few things they need to finish up, but we're able to work around it. So the day was fine. It just was weird. It just didn't have that shiny floors, and all that. It was still kind of dusty and dirty, and ceiling tiles out and all that stuff. But that we're good. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just mention, if you didn't know, a group of people got together, did some work on the stadium at the high school. We made some improvements upon things. We still got a few things left to do, but I just wanted to kind of mention them. If you didn't see, Trent Bush was there, helped me. I was there as well. He helped me prime the back of the bleachers. We pressure washed those, repainted them and all that stuff. So that looks nice. We also touched up a few other spots on the stadium at the high school. The garage doors we repainted, then touched up a few spots just to make it look nicer. Sean Swain, William Patton, obviously our director of technology, and then we also put the speakers for the stadium. They were all on one pole, and they kind of blasted down on everybody, and it was kind of a weird one because the preamp was in the crow's nest, and then the wire went back to the Quonset hut, and then from the Quonset hut it ran underground about 400 feet to underneath the bleachers, and then from there up to the pole. And so there was a lot of degradation in the signal and all that stuff. If you were there, it just didn't sound real good. And especially, I know I've talked to a lot of people, if you were like in that concession stand area, that's where all three speakers were. Was there? I don't know. I said 3 yesterday and held up 4 fingers the other day. So we did that. We're touching up the sign that says Home of the Mustang. We repaint that. We got a little bit left to do on that. A few other upgrades. We're talking about some LED lights underneath that awning, red LED lights. So when people come in, shit shines up and looks red and white. Just trying to do a few things to make it look nice. Also, Mr. Folkers donated the lift for us to use for 5 Star Enterprises. Definitely came in handy. I tried to pressure wash it up the best I could and get any overspray off. I think I got most of it. But no, a group project, like I said, everybody put in a lot of hours and, it's looking good and excited and excited about everything and all that. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned all those people for helping. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Wow.
And Mr. Mills is at a conference meeting, so he's not in attendance tonight. So.
Well, thank you. We won't be voting on anything already after 6.
I think so. He seems like a boy.
Wanted to introduce myself. I'm the math interventionist here in Mayberry. I emailed you the other day.
Yes.
Giving you a space to go with the name.
I appreciate that.
I have a second.
Thank you so much for everything. Anytime. What'd you think of Brandon's job down there? oh, it looks spectacular, that mulch is A+ work, you can't even work hard at it.
Yes.
Yes, it is, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really good.
Thanks, folks. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Good to see you.
That's fine.
Let me know. What do you do?
Next week will, is a little bit easier week for me, so just let me know.
Yeah, that's a good guy.
I said next week is a much,
That's what you said.
we got home volleyball games, I think on Tuesday and Thursday,
That
but,
was nice.
but, I mean, when you want to, you're only, like 4 holes.
I think it's pretty cool.